Hello, and thank you very much for coming to see my talk today. My name is Lisa Winstanley, and I'm an assistant professor at the School of Art, Design and Media at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And today I'd like to talk to you about a collaborative typographic project that leverages trust as a creative catalyst. Undergraduate typography students were asked to explore the concept of trust by an active research strategy and experimental typographic practice. The project employed a design thinking model to frame investigations into this complex social phenomenon, with the objective being to create visual narrative via tangible interpretations of a distinctly intangible concept. In total, 27 students participated in the project, and they were randomly divided into groups of 4 to 5 members, with 6 groups formed in total. All participants were provided with a detailed project brief alongside a series of 5 assigned exercises. The following section of this presentation will now move to introduce the design thinking methodology which underpin the creative practice throughout this project. Design thinking was chosen as the methodological approach for this project, as it provides a robust human-centric approach to problem solving and supports visualization as a pragmatic means for the development of creative strategies and innovative solutions. Lydekker and Ogilvy 2011 also purport that in a world that needs innovation and well-run companies, design thinking is an approach to problem solving that allows us to combine right brain creative thinking with left brain analytical thinking. Therefore, it was deemed appropriate to adopt a strategy that had a clear, teachable methodology, but also the flexibility to encourage experimentation. Introducing the 4S approach, which comprises of 4 iterative creative phases. The first of which is the C phase. This is equivalent to the empathize and define stages proposed in alternative design thinking models, whereby the design problem is defined and broken down accordingly. The objective here is to find the idea, and this is divided into 4 stages. Firstly, to identify. Identify the design problem by asking questions, determine who it is you are designing for, and what issues they may be facing in relation to the creative problem. Secondly, discover. To examine and analyze by listening, empathizing, and gathering insights. This should help to identify what problem you should focus on. Thirdly, examine. The goal here is to establish what it is that you know about the problem, and equally to establish what it is that you don't know, which is sometimes the most important aspect to figure out. Lastly, analyze. By comparing and contrasting all the information that you've gathered, this can help to gain a much broader viewpoint of the topic. Moving on to the sort phase. This could be likened to the define stage of other design thinking models, meaning that brainstorming and unpacking the data from the C stage takes place in order to establish what it is you're working with. Firstly, asking you to discuss and acknowledge any unique insights found. The next stage assesses which of these insights were important by trying to understand how they could aid the design process. And lastly, agreeing on a creative direction that addresses the fundamental creative problem. The next phase is synthesize, the fun part where you get to light the proverbial creative fuse. This translates to 4 stages of finding, unlearning, shaping, and experimenting to determine how you can work within the constraints of the brief according to the problem scope. The find stage acknowledges that you've identified the creative problem and reviewed it from multiple angles, and asks you to now find and develop a range of potential solutions. The next stage asks you to unlearn, to attempt to forget what you think you already know, to innovate, ideate, brainstorm, and play. The shape and experiment stages ask you to test and iterate prototypes, build, test, and then build again with a view to intelligent, fast failure. Finally, the solutions phase. This is the part when the final solution can be unveiled and made real, resolving any issues and last-minute tweaks, establishing protocols and best practice, and authenticating that stakeholders are happy with the solutions. Lastly, launch the project and reflect on the outcomes. For some students, this was the first time that they had worked within a design thinking methodology. Others had more experience, so the groups were divided to ensure an even balance. I'll now move on to discuss the project brief specifications and requirements. The project brief requires students to work as a team, and team roles were specifically designed in line with Belbin's 2017 theory that there are 9 clusters of behaviour, which propagate high performance within team dynamics. The roles were therefore designed to facilitate optimal behavioural contributions among members, in contrast to merely providing titles for each position. Significantly, this also allowed students to feel ownership of their own roles and contribute integrally to the team decision-making process. The teams were instructed to discuss the concept of trust meant to them and how they plan to interpret it. Prompts for debate were suggested, such as if trust could be considered as a behavioural intervention, a psychological state, or an attitude or willingness to take a risk. These prompts stem from my current research and provided avenues for scholarly discourse to underpin the practice-led component of this project. Instruction was also provided on the materiality of the work, and a small budget of 100 Singapore dollars was allocated to each group to purchase materials. As aforementioned, this project brief was supported by 5 assigned exercises. The following section of this presentation will now move to discuss each assigned exercise and its relevance to the brief. The first exercise helps students to build their team, delegating team roles and responsibilities through creation of a team operating agreement and forecasting a project timeline. The objective being to aid students in determining rules for communication, file sharing protocols, and team working methods, with the overarching aim of developing a culture of trust within the group at the onset of the project. The next exercise was divided into 2 parts. Part A, a brain dump, and Part B, preliminary sketches. A brain dump is an exercise in sense-making. It utilises both analytical and synthesising skills to externalise mental efforts. In this instance, students were asked to create a brain dump by hand, utilising HUMPS. HUMPS is an acronym for hands-on, unique, memorable, portable, and stylish. Secondly, students were asked to create a minimum of 5 rough sketches to encourage the generation of transferable knowledge through tangible artefacts. The knowledge transfer occurring here could be attributed to the creation of design boundary objects, or DBOs. A design boundary object can be defined to be any representational artifact that enables knowledge about a designed system, its designed process, or its environment to be transferred between social worlds, and that simultaneously facilitates the alignment of stakeholder interests populating these social worlds by reducing design knowledge gaps. Assigned exercise 2 provided opportunity to create several tangible artifacts that were subsequently utilised as design boundary objects by the students as a means to effective communication in the group. The third exercise asked students to develop a range of potential solutions to the creative brief. It was specified that the solutions did not need to be viable at this stage, but that it was more important to consider innovative applications. Precedence was also given to the influence of material attributes on user experience. The resulting ideation provided students with a clearer creative direction and a more distilled notion of how materials could shape their solutions. The example shown here depicts the use of materials in creation of 3-dimensional typographic installations, whereby the student considered how interaction with the piece could create mistrust in the functionality of materials. The fourth exercise asked students to choose an existing typographic installation for analysis. The idea behind this exercise was to not only expose them to contemporary typographic practice, but also to enable a holistic approach to the design problem. As opposed to other qualitative research methods, case studies encompass many phases of research, including problem definition, formation of hypothesis, and data collection or data analysis, thus providing the holistic research framework envisaged. The students chose to analyse incredibly varied designers and typographic applications, thereby expanding their pool of knowledge and widening the scope of their own practice. The final exercise requested students to create low-fidelity prototypes of their chosen design solution and to seek feedback from key stakeholders. They were instructed to document feedback, both positive and negative, and as a team create a plan to develop a high-fidelity prototype for final user testing. This human-centric approach also ensured that the end user's needs were empathetically considered as a critical aspect of the refinement process, as well as a means to test functionality. As discussed at the offset of this presentation, trust is a complex phenomenon, nonetheless one that regularly permeates our life as an essential component in our social interactions. With this in mind, the challenges that the students faced in this project were numerous. To make the intangible tangible, and to embody a concept so familiar yet so decidedly ambiguous. I'll now present the final outcomes from each of the 6 groups. This interactive installation required the audience to balance a series of plush letter forms on a wooden seesaw platform. Each letter of the word believe was handcrafted from colourful fabric and weighted to give each letter form a unique weight. In order to successfully balance the seesaw, participants had to accurately kern the letter forms across the wooden platform. The concept behind the piece was based on the fact that the level of trust between two parties may not always be equal, and that seemingly small actions could have much larger repercussions. This group broached the concept of trust by reviewing its fragility and presented the gossamer of truth as an embodiment of broken trust. As a representation of honesty and transparency, the letter forms were laser cut from clear acrylic, but upon closer inspection, it was revealed that these transparent letter forms actually spell out the word betrayal. The sharpness of the letter forms abutting the delicate balloons gives the viewer a sense of unease, as if the balloon could burst at any moment, revealing the metaphorical lie within. Group 3 tackled this project by playfully addressing the notion of betrayal, with the idea that some people trust far too easily. Their team produced laser-cut stencils to spell out several applications of the word sweet, and then utilised salt as their creative medium. The salt was coloured and scented to give the false impression that in fact it was sugar. Unknowing participants were then encouraged to use the templates along with the various coloured substances in order to populate the canvas with type. They were then enticed to taste the typography, with some rather amusing results. This 3-part exhibit was constructed from several concentric circles, which were laser cut from transparent acrylic. The raster function of the laser cutter machine was then utilised to etch out the typography in each circle, which when layered at a specific angle formed a message of mistrust. The idea being that the viewer would need to twist the circles into the right place in order to correctly decipher the message. Conceptually, this group focused on misplaced trust, visually communicating how not everyone can or should be trusted to represent your best interests, effectively twisting the words of another. This solution focused on the vulnerability of trusting. The group fabricated a wooden frame which supported a large acrylic panel. Users were expected to stand behind the acrylic sheet and have water thrown at them in order to reveal a hidden typographic message, which stated, "Now you see me." The invisible type was created by stenciling the letter form onto an acrylic panel using a waterproof shoe spray. This became visible only for a few seconds once the soap water solution was thrown at the panel. This piece created a real sense of anticipation once you stood behind the clear panel. And it was necessary for me to trust that the students did not, in fact, intend to throw water all over me. Unfortunately, in my case, my trust was well placed and I managed to stay dry. This final installation explored the notion of trust being dependent on external factors, with the correct circumstances required to gain trust. To express this, the group employed the variable element of natural wind as one aspect of the installation, making it interactive with the external environment within which it was positioned. When the environment was disturbed, for example, the draft created when someone walked by the installation, the word worth was distorted as the visual embodiment of uncertainty. In conclusion, the groups created 6 unique typographic installations, each utilising trust as the catalyst for creativity. The resulting outcomes were varied in materials, applications, interactivity, and interpretation of the complex notion of trust. Alternative and unconventional methods of creating typography were explored, ranging from edible type to modular movable type, type as a system, and type with hidden meaning, each considering the nuances of typographic variables, typesetting conventions, and linguistic issues. By implementing the 4S approach, teams were able to streamline the collaborative process and document each stage of their project with clarity. By utilising trust as part of a strategic design thinking creative practice, this project reviews how trust can be leveraged to improve, build, and nurture collaborative relationships, with the ultimate aim to create a greater appreciation of typographic practice that extends beyond aesthetics alone. Thank you very much for your time.